Let's go and move with life. Let it go. Something new tonight. Let's go and move with life. Let it go. Something new tonight.
G'day guys, welcome to the unofficial Scorecard podcast, a podcast where we talk all things boxing and occasionally the wider world of combat sports. This is episode 65 and today I am joined once again by the combat sports digital juggernaut Morning Kombat's own Brian Campbell. So guys, BC joined me today at the perfect time. He's currently got his boots in the ground in Las Vegas, which as we know this coming weekend is the home of two Australians in two different world title fights with Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora and Michael Zarafa and Erislandy Lara. We went through the whole PBC fiasco, change up, glow up. I think it's a better card. We got into all that. We broke down all the fights as BC does. He's such an astute and he has a way of just analysing and finding so many different storylines that genuinely just never occur to me. So he's got such a good 360 view in terms of his analysis when he really gets into events and career trajectories and stuff like that. It's always incredibly fascinating and informative talking to him and just hearing all these other sides of the coin that I would never even think of. So that was brilliant to break that down in great detail. The full card there that's happening on the PBC on Amazon debut show, headlined by Tim Tszyu, and of course we had to get into and have a chat about the Oscar Valdez-Liam Wilson fight, which just recently got upgraded to be contesting the WBO junior lightweight title now with Emmanuel Navarrete officially moving up to lightweight and challenging for that belt, a weight division north. So I got, everyone I talked to is so excited about that fight, and, spoiler alert, BC is pretty fired up too. It just can't miss. It's going to be so much fun. We also we got Brian to break down the recent relaunch of Morning Kombat, which will be starting at the beginning of April. They have been on a small little hiatus at the moment, but everything's being relaunched. So we got to pick his brain about the format and what's going to be happening moving forward and all those type of things. And as you know, with BC, it's so easy just to jump off on a few tangents here and there and get into some other stuff. And as is customary at this point, we had to finish with a little bit of Survivor talk. So guys, this was an absolute ton of fun. I always really enjoy talking to BC. I know I always get really good feedback for when he is gracious enough to give me his time and appear on the podcast. I get really, really good feedback. I know you guys will be looking forward to this, so I'll keep this short and let's jump to that now. All right, well, here I am joined once again by a long-time boxing media member, along with his mate Rafe Bartholomew, one half of the cult classic State of Combat Boxing podcast, former broadcaster for Ring City USA and most recently Showbox, host of the soon-to-be relaunched combat sports juggernaut Morning Kombat, and most importantly, a one-time Manny Pacquiao duet partner. It's BC, Brian Campbell. BC, thanks for coming back on and sharing some time with me again, mate.
That's a deep cut. I forgot that Manny Pacquiao story ever happened, so I appreciate the reminder.
I watch the last part of that interview every 3 months, I reckon.
You should have more hobbies, or at least better ones. But hey, always fired up to chat inside the box with you. I appreciate the old school love for Rafe and I. We're like Harry and Sally, if you know the movie reference there. We're gonna end up together in front of a microphone when we're, in our 80s talking about heel Canelo back in the day. So, I'll always be lingering in a new podcast with that guy. But yes, happy to be here. Happy to be in Las Vegas because it's been a weird kind of 4 months for my career, for American boxing in some ways, right? With Saudi Arabia taking over for Las Vegas and also with the PBC having that extended break. But, we back and we're ready. And Tim Tszyu, I mean, come on, man, that's your guy, right? Come on.
Well, he's one of them. He's one of them this weekend. We got a couple, which is incredibly exciting. But first of all, BC, you just mentioned you are in Las Vegas. So what sort of coverage and what sort of stuff are you getting up to this weekend that be hitting the YouTube, I'm assuming, shortly?
Yeah. Appreciate it. I'm excited to be out here. Shout out to the MGM Grand Resorts. I'm going to be on Radio Row at the MGM Grand for all things PBC on Prime Video, which is, of course, Tim Tszyu versus the replacement Sebastian Fundora in the main event. Loaded pay-per-view card. Excited to be on the ground with Morning Kombat, my podcast. Luke Thomas and myself going to get big-time interviews next couple of days. A lot of live coverage of all things going on inside the MGM Grand Boxing Media Center, which should be wild because they're going to be hosting the press conference and the weigh-in in that same room. So should be fun. I'll also be covering the fight Saturday night at T-Mobile Arena for CBS Sports. So looking forward, because this is the rare replacement upgrade on the pay-per-view level. Extremely rare, right? It's like for as maligned as that opening offering was to kick off the PBC on Prime Video era with Keith Thurman against Tim Tszyu, bad luck with a Thurman injury. Great luck that it's not just Sebastian Fundora. Now it's a title unification fight. It should be a fun time here. I mean, this is not Mayweather-Pacquiao here, but boxing is back in Las Vegas, and I'm excited for the PBC's first step into their own new era.
Absolutely, BC. And that shows why you're such a pro, mate, because you already made the segue that I was going to make, just more poor at it. So you've done it for me, mate. But there was an upgrade here. Tim's sort of recently, in the last year or two, found his way to have these kind of last-minute changes that have actually worked in his favour. Like when he was originally scheduled to fight Jamel Charlo and he broke his hand, he got the Tony Harrison fight, which at that stage of his development was the perfect fight at the right time, had that brilliant year last year, and now So what I wanted to get into was the whole Keith Thurman thing. We'll get to the Fundora fight, but over here, we were all just scratching our heads like, what? This guy's had 3 fights in 7 years. Like, that's an actual legitimate stat. 3 fights in 84 months. Like, this is insane. I just thought this was... Straight away, I thought Tim in 5, easy, 5 or less. I never really deviated on that. So, again, just as you alluded to, me personally, I was wrapped with this change. What was the sort of the American boxing public's view on the matchup and now, as you've mentioned, the change?
It was a bit head-scratching. I think it was largely connected, though, to the idea of PBC is arguably, the leading promotional force in boxing or managerial group. Obviously, PBC works with multiple promoters. And to have that TV deal in Showtime, which they've had in recent years in the States, along with Fox, they were a premier power player. So moving to Amazon Prime Video and kind of being forced to do so with my parent company, Paramount Global, sunsetting Showtime Sports after nearly 4 decades, we were expecting a big bang, and I think we're still getting the big bang, not just the retooled main event, but the depth of this card. But I think fans initially were like, okay, who's going to be? Gervonta Davis? It's going to be Canelo? It's going to be Bud Crawford? What muscle in the PBC, library are we going to flex and put out there? I think the Keith Thurman fight it's tough. It got a really aggressive, hard, bad rap in the States. Sounds similar to what happened down under. And in one sense, that's all certainly justified. Thurman's 35. He's been a career welterweight. He'll be moving up in weight, although he did fight in and around this weight class in the amateur level. And it's the inactivity, the injuries, and I think just the fact that even though Keith Thurman, who would have actually been the A side of this pay-per-view, even though storyline-wise it certainly was and now especially is more about Tim Tszyu, Las Vegas debut, let's go global, let's explode through. Keith Thurman still does bring star value. I think it's just that not only has he been inactive, but what's the best way to sum up the second half of Keith Thurman's career? It's like sporadic. At one point he had the best. Let's say at one point he had the best resume of all the welterweights before Spence and Bud Crawford truly took over the division. But it's not only been sporadic; it's been he gets hurt in performances against fighters he shouldn't. Right. So I think a lot of that played into the idea of he's already kind of behind the 8 ball coming back after. It's been such a long layoff. Let's be honest, that the sanctioning bodies wouldn't even make this a WBO title fight, which is mind blowing for those of us who know and are in boxing and how often fights get decided or title fights that don't make any sense. They actually had standards in that regard. I think it got a worse rap than it should have because Thurman's capable. He's a very good boxer. He was always a plus puncher at welterweight. I just think, though, when you look at the inactivity, which can't be overlooked, when you look at it's just a better fight, man. It's just a better fight. So that got maligned. The idea that at least this was a thick card, deep card was sort of saving it. And I still think it is a very deep card with 4 fights on the pay-per-view main card, 2 free, whether you're a subscriber or not on Prime Video. So in the US, so it's still a big deal, but man, how rare is that upgrade? Now you go from, to your point, okay, it'll be interesting the first half, but Tszyu probably eventually stops Thurman, who doesn't like it to the body, randomly can be hit with a shot that can just, put him off course. So let's sub in a guy with a 9-inch height and reach advantage, who is in this division, somehow makes that weight for being 6'6", loves to brawl. And I know, of course, timing isn't everything in the sense that Fundora is coming off a loss, a knockout loss, an upset loss to Brian Mendoza, who then moved on with that victory, did Mendoza, and fought Tim Tszyu last October and came up empty. But we know who Fundora is. It felt like this was a fight, Tszyu versus Fundora, that already could have happened, especially had Brian Mendoza not pull the upset. But even with Fundora directly off the defeat, and even with Tim Tszyu as high as a 6-1 betting favorite here in Las Vegas, it's still a different fight, and it's a real fight. It has the potential to be an all-action fireworks fight that, yeah, maybe Tim Tszyu does eventually get there and chops down the giant, but it might be heck on the way to getting there, on the way to getting inside. So that's excitement, but here's the best part about it. Here's the best part about this upgrade. You went from it being an attraction that didn't make a lot of sense with Keith Thurman and a title not on the line to now not only is the WBO title of Tim Tszyu on the line, and it should be, right? He already should have fought for the Undisputed Championship had it not been for bad luck and injuries to Jermell Charlo. And now it's going to be a unification because good old Fundora was already supposed to be on this card in a hot fire slugfest, potentially against Sergey Boachuk for that vacant WBC title. I love that the powers that be somehow upgraded the opponent, the stakes, the meaning. And oh, by the way, Terrence Crawford's like, yeah, I got next, guys. And if Terrence Crawford is in Vegas this week, and if he's in the arena ready to be faced off against the winner, then this really goes from potentially a bummer for fans wanting more from PBC to something where you're like, okay, I see where we're building, and the future could be bright this summer, especially if Tim Tszyu gets his hand raised. Boy, talk about thinking you were going to get the monumental defining fight of your career against Jermell Charlo, who suddenly no longer has any of the 4 titles, to potentially being 1 win away from fighting the pound-for-pound stalwart that is Terrence Crawford at this point, fresh off of Errol Spence. Man, it's just bigger business now, and that's what makes me excited.
Man, it's all lining up, Tszyu, isn't it? Everything just seems to be falling into place just one way or another. So it's such an interesting time. There's so many different ways we could tackle it. You basically touched on them all there, BC, but I agree with you 100%. It's definitely a better fight. It's 2 top 3, 100% top 5 guys fighting for 2 of the titles. It's almost like that. This 154-pound division was just like the gift that kept on giving for so many years through that little older generation with J-Rock and Hurd and all those guys. They've all kind of moved on now, and this is sort of that next generation coming through, which has its own little, interesting parts of weirdness in there, like Fundora is coming off a knockout loss and he's fighting for 2 world titles. Whatever, but he's still a top guy.
That's boxing, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not let that get in the way of some good matchmaking. But yeah, I absolutely love it. This fight's so much better. The buzz down here for it's like a $60 pay-per-view, which is as high as it gets down here. For the Thurman fight was like, what? Come on, man. We got Michael Zarafa on the card too. That absolutely beefed it up, but it was a bit of a hard sell. Now you can't deny the price tag. I know with the stakes and the fights that are going on, all credit in the world to Tim for taking it on like that, switching game plans. But
I wanted to say that, man. I wrote a story on this for CBS Sports this week. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think it's for good reason. What Tim Tszyu has been forced to do over the past year and a half since he first arrived on the scene. Let's not forget, his U.S. debut against Terrell Gaucher wasn't perfect. No. Tim Tszyu will tell you himself, I entered Terminator mode earlier than I expected, and that was him getting knocked down in the first round, of course, but rallying back, getting a decision win, getting a hard-earned win, but certainly not that oh crap, Tim Tszyu's coming, Charlo better be scared. What has he done since then? We talked about Charlo falling out of undisputed title fights twice that forced Tim Tszyu to go, look, am I going to be on Charlo's schedule? Or am I going to be on my own? And the fact that he so quickly packed together 4 fights in a 12-month span, in a lot of ways getting different looks. When he fought Tony Harrison, that was the only guy who had ever beaten Jermell Charlo. And he's been able to go back home to Australia a few times and have big events and now spin that into his Las Vegas debut, his U.S. pay-per-view debut, his headlining debut, and it's a unification fight, and Terrence Crawford could be on deck. What Tim Tszyu has done and made lemonade out of lemons here is old school. And it would make sense for the son of a Hall of Famer, yet he doesn't fight exactly like his dad. And I really have actually liked how Tim Tszyu publicly has always put respect on his dad's name, obviously, but always been, the tagline, what's my mother effing name? I mean, it's a little cringe, but it's also a little he's aggressively looking to set up shop and create his own identity. And by happenstance, it's worked out perfectly. Imagine if he went directly from the Terrell Gaucher fight, where he would automatically be, let's say, underrated because people that watched that fight saw a guy just come in with his hands down, throwing bombs, looking to get into a war. If he had gone from that to the Charlo fight, it wouldn't have had the fanfare. He wouldn't have been the same fighter that he is now. I have so much respect that he took Fundora, no questions asked last minute. That, Crawford's on the horizon, no questions asked. Yeah, I want that fight. Let's do this. This is how you earn your hype the old-fashioned way, the hard way, by going in the ring and doing it. And the fact that he's been just shifting with and not allowing himself to have to chase others and saying, no, I'm an attraction to myself. When you're ready, we'll fight. But if it's not Charlo now, I'm moving on to my next target. And like we said, it just turned out that Jermell Charlo no longer has any of the 4 belts that he brought into that Canelo Alvarez historic undisputed versus undisputed fight last fall. That, of course, unfortunately was a one-sided bummer due to Charlo's performance. But you talked about the resetting of the division, where now it's suddenly like it's Zoo, it's Fundora too. It could be Terrence Crawford. I mean, what about Boots Ennis, who, we all want to set up shop at welterweight and finally fight for the full titles. He's always said, look, if Crawford won't fight me at 47, I might just follow him up. Imagine what can happen. Errol Spence, not done yet, or at least I hope not, and could be back at 154. This division is interesting and wild now, and I'd like to also see what's Jermell Charlo's timeline. When is he coming back? But either way, Tim Tszyu has stolen all of the clout that Jermell Charlo had just 1 year ago, and he did it by just being active and fighting who's next in line and who's available. I love that. We don't see enough of that anymore, right? Like, that's what it's all about. That's business, man. That's what I like when Tim could be a little cringe. I saw your face there. But when Tim shows up and it's like, nah, man, like you did on Monday, he's like, this is a business trip. I feel comfortable here and I'm ready to go. Hey, it's Las Vegas. And it used to be when your country, if it's the UK or Australia, you think you got somebody that could be a star, bring them to Vegas and our guys will beat them. It doesn't feel like that anymore because Zoo's a 6-1 favorite here. And no, you wouldn't favor him over Crawford, but that's also a fight that makes sense and would do big business on either side of the ocean. And man, for Tim Tszyu to be in this spot right now that he is, that's a credit to him and his team, and I give him a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, absolutely, BC. You touched on it. It's almost as if like competing at the sport that you're in will make you better at it. Like, who would have thought? You know what I mean? Like, what a groundbreaking technique. But credit to Tim for taking those fights. I couldn't have said it any better than you. And as you mentioned now, like that Terrence Crawford, we don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, but that's lurking out there. And I didn't even think if he was going to be in the arena, but that would be amazing. The camera cuts to him, say it does go Tim's way after some sort of impressive finish or something like that. Mate, that fight makes all the sense to do. It's probably in the top 3 best fights for Crawford, Besides Boots, Canelo,
certainly.
It's probably Tim Tszyu's number 3, So it's...
And if you're
right
Tszyu and you're on that gradual build like he's been doing, it's the right escalation. Pay-per-view debut in Vegas now. Let's see what's next against Crawford. The only question is, where would it be? You know a lot more about the economics down under. We assume when someone like Tszyu rises on the global scene that you can still make more money going back to where he's from. But I wondered, does that do better in Las Vegas? Does it do better in Brisbane, or does it do better over there with Turkey and then the boys over in Saudi Arabia? I mean, I guess whoever's the highest bidder answers that, right?
Yeah, no one's got Saudi money like the Saudis, so it's definitely them. But could you see Crawford coming to Australia? There's no way. I couldn't see that happening.
Didn't he go there for Horn? No, they went to Vegas. They went to Vegas. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he went to Scotland for Ricky Burns. I think that was his only time. So, but hey, he's more than welcome. I'd love to see him here. But we're getting a little bit carried away. But the possibilities are pretty mind blowing. But the actual fight itself, I mean, sort of conventional wisdom tells us, all right, Fundora's a giant. You can barely reach his head. Go the body. That's what everyone's tried to do, and it hasn't really worked. Mendoza knocked him out with a headshot, so no one's really gone after that body. But I feel like Tim's the best body puncher that Fundora's come up against. So I have to think that's going to factor into the game plan. How do you sort of see the style clash playing out on fight night, BC?
Well, it depends what Fundora has learned from this disastrous knockout, right? And it's one fight, and it's certainly just one loss. But I think it was sort of left over from that very exciting victory that Fundora had against Erickson Lubin on Showtime a couple of years back. That was arguably the fight of the year. and showed the vulnerability of Fundora and also obviously the dog in him and the resiliency that if he's going to continue to completely punt his height and reach advantage, and I don't mean he's got to now be a slick boxer from the outside, but if he's going to completely punt that and be a blood and guts inside brawler and just not commit to head movement, just not commit to responsible basic defense, then what Mendoza did is inevitable. It really is. Somebody eventually is going to stand in that pocket, endure the high stress that Fundora puts on you with that high volume, and can chip away and actually get you out of there. I've interviewed Fundora for years and sort of did that sly sort of way of being like, hey, man, a lot of critics say, look at your size, but look at the way you fight, and it's the same thing. We talked to the Figueroa brothers, and Brandon Figueroa is still one of the top young fighters in the 126 area. I think Brandon Figueroa has done a great job in ways that his brother Omar wasn't able to, of coming in with that berserker style where you're giving up that hide and reach, but you're standing in the pocket, but slowly able to add the wrinkles to your game where you can switch stances. You can work a couple rounds from the outside if necessary. The Fundora family's been boxing since day one. I mean, Sebastian's sisters are world champion at the moment. Their father's their trainer. But this basic idea of caveman fighting just won't work on this level. So if Fundora can bring in a few new wrinkles, does that extend his life in the fight? Because he is that type of fighter that even though he's there to be hit, and he is, and that's going to be a downfall in the long run if he doesn't make these changes, it's not always easy to hit him even though he's there to be hit. Because you may get off a clean shot, but you may find yourself pinned in the corner taking flurries of shots in return, and maybe he's not a, one-punch knockout threat, but that guy can back you up, he can put stress on you, and he has a style that judges love. Can he add in enough of a defensive mix, enough of some type of variety to his game? If he can, this is going to be an interesting matchup because even though Tim Tszyu said, look, we went in the gym this past weekend and they asked him, how long did it take you to adjust to Fundora? He's like, about 2 hours. We made the adjustment. That's what we do. And I'm not saying it's you would need 6 months to prepare for Fundora, but it's a completely different stance, style, fighter size. I mean, we all love freak fighters in any division, whether it was Paul Williams at welterweight, Diego Corrales at lightweight, just unnaturally tall and thin, in a lot of ways secretly powerful. But in this regard here, it's like, how long can he pull off that style? I think that Fundora's too smart, and he's got too many plus qualities to just be a caveman brawler. You know what I'm saying? Like, the plus qualities being the natural size, the plus qualities being elusiveness, odd athleticism in there. He's got to make Tszyu have to work for this, because if Tim Tszyu's able to get inside early and make this a fun brawl, I can see him chopping down that tree. But I want to see if Fundora can give him looks that you can say it took you 2 hours to adjust, but when you're preparing for a slick, smaller boxer in Thurman, somebody who might end up fighting more of a defensive, negative style as the fight goes on, especially if you put some power on him, it is a completely different ball game to have to switch to the idea of someone being all over you. So I don't expect Tszyu to instantly adjust to that. I do expect some back and forth. But it's going to be how much will Fundora risk leaving his chin out there in order to get his stuff off too. It's still a fight Tim Tszyu should win. It's still a fight I will predict Tim Tszyu will win by knockout and ultimately expect him to do that. I just think, like we established at the start of this interview, even with Keith Thurman having a much bigger name, right now in this division, the credibility you're looking for, you're going to get that from doing this to Sebastian Fundora over anything else. So I think Tim will be measured. I do think he'll be focused on the body like you're saying, but it's like anyone who thinks he's still the guy in the Gaucher fight, he's just not. Tim Tszyu is right when he talks about not getting the respect for his craft, for his ability to evolve. He's not his dad as a pure boxer. He's not his dad as a one-punch knockout threat either. But, man, he is a physical force who does not stop coming forward, can lean on his chin if he has to, is doing it less and less. It's going to actually be fun in a sense that even if I told you, hey, dude, it's going to be a fifth-round knockout for Tszyu. This is the type of fight where the journey to get to that point is going to be very fun to see how he navigates it and how hard of a fight Fundora can actually make it. Because I know we all imagine this idea of Tszyu coming in there with the big axe and chopping down that tree. But, if you screw around with Fundora, you can end up pouring out your gas tank in the middle of the fight in a war in the corner. So let's see what type of magic he has. I think there's a lot of pressure on him and his family to come out there, and because if they go out there and they get flattened and it's 2 knockout losses in a row and you package that with a Lubin fight, then you've got a former bright prospect title contender that's going in the other direction. There's referendum time, and I think that's something that not enough people are looking at in terms of an actual storyline, in terms of the challenge that Tim Tszyu has in front of him.
Yeah, I didn't even take that into account, BC. You're 100% right for sure. But I think it's important to note as well, like the development of Tim. And I'd like to get your opinion on him in particular, because I know you jumped on and seeked out fight footage and watching live fights of Tim way before most people from overseas did. So you've seen the development. Like the thing that I keep hearing from the American fan base and even some pundits as well is that, he's his walk forward pressure fighter. And he has been lately, and each fight he's gotten better at it. But you saw the Jeff Vaughn fight. He completely nullified everything Jeff tried to do with his feet. He is multi-dimensional. He just hasn't had to use another different tool out of his toolbox for the last couple of fights, which seem to have been the most highest profile overseas, obviously. So, obviously with this fight, Fundora is so big, he's so tall, he's so long, you're going to have to go after him at some point. So he's probably going to stick into that same style. But there's no doubt in my mind that Tszyu can turn this guy at mid-range and find angles and entries and exits that no one else has really been able to, just bring back that footwork that he was using with Jeff Horn. But his development, do you remember when Canelo, after the Triple G fights, he fought Danny Jacobs and he had this insane head movement we'd never seen before. And then he went up to super middleweight and all of a sudden he had this power we'd never seen before. And there was this 4 or 5 fight stretch where it seemed like he was just adding these new wrinkles that we'd never seen from him, and this steep learning curve and sharp development. It's Tim's almost done that to a lower degree. I'm not going to say it's on the same level, but he's almost done that his last 6 or 7 fights. It just so happens that the last couple, it's been the pressure. But I love that you pointed out him and Costa are very different, and it annoys me so much when people say they fight so similarly. I think they're very different as well. But that eye, they both have that eye. That's his greatest ability. He doesn't have the power like his old man, but he can see it and he's got the speed to deliver it. So,
he's got the creativity. He's got the angles, like you mentioned. So he creates that power with the shots you don't see coming. They're heavy. He's able to walk you down and be in close range, but be responsible enough to not be all these things we're saying about Fundora, that you can be a there to be hit, that you can be a big pinata. I give him so much credit in that Tony Harrison fight, because it wasn't just was that another late replacement? I feel like every fight has been a late replacement.
It was fight, but 6 weeks or 2 months or something. It wasn't ideal.
But it's the whole idea that, why did Harrison look so good in 2 fights against Jermell Charlo? It's because that stubborn, smart boxing ability, counterpunching ability with the toughness, that if Tony Harrison is in a fight where it's not advantageous for him to slug in exchange, and a lot of times because of his chin it isn't, he can fight you in such a old school boxing style that it takes you a while to adjust and learn. There was no adjustment period within this fight. And, it was on home soil and Harrison flying in there. Oh, and he's a veteran now and he hasn't been all that active. No, I don't take any of that. The maturity that Tszyu showed, that, okay, we know he can go after it. And he tried to show that a little bit too much in the Gaucher fight, like we mentioned. But since that fight, man, the return back to the basics, but he's evolving each of these categories that I think he's awkward also in his own way, that he doesn't get credit to. And he's way smarter than people realize coming in. That's giving him a well-rounded ability that when he does get in there with a Crawford, let's say somebody that is naturally going to be faster and IQ-wise, ability to set traps-wise, just going to be another level from him, well, then you got that chin, that Terminator style, that ability to get inside and make tough fights if you need to. But I don't sleep on his pure boxing ability, even if his hand speed might not be up there to some of the super elites you'll find at 154. He's found a way to get his shots off, to get them off cleanly. And it's that defense, man. The head movement, the responsibility they showed against Harrison. He went in there like an assassin, but it was perfectly measured between, I'm going to retain my level of danger, but at the same time be responsible. I mean, that's heady veteran stuff right there. So he is as equipped, I think, as he can be to be in a spot where he might be one win away from a truly super fight against Crawford. But, man, it's just – I think it's been fueled by that chip on his shoulder. And, that whole idea. I mean, what is the down-under reaction to what's my MFN name? Is it
I think the younger, like guys in their 20s like it, but then, I'm 36, so for me it was like, ugh, come on, Tim. I'm a Maloney guy. That's how I'm boring and conservative. That's how I like it. I was a bit like, but I think the younger people like it. The TikTok generation loved it. But
I mean, I just like it from the standpoint of like the name's there. I mean, it's not like the dad's his trainer. It's not like the dad's showing up to every fight. They live in separate countries, but it's the whole idea of I'll get the rub from being in that lineage, but I'm not going to adopt the same style. I'm not going to adopt the same public persona. I'm just going to be my own guy, and I really respect that. I didn't, even though we talked, and I think it was guys like you that got me pumped up in the States that Tim Tszyu was coming, that he's for real. And of course, when I watched the step-ups that you need to domestically, the Jeff Horn fight that broke through, that I was like, oh, damn. But I think it's also like, I didn't expect him to be this good at this point.
Me either.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't have favored him against Charlo back then. But I think now, if I knew that he could be this fighter, I'd favor this fighter against any version of Charlo. And I think Charlo at one point was one of the 10 best fighters in the sport. But I didn't expect it. I didn't expect we'd be talking about Terrence Crawford. I didn't expect that, yes, he'll be a big underdog against Terrence Crawford. Everybody would. But he is durable and tough enough where that's a fight that's interesting, and I got to see it. Hey, Fundora first, but I'm so tough on people that come to the States and try to make their star here. And he has just taken that old school way of thinking, for me at least, and just flipped it upside down. He's almost like arriving in the States as a finished product. And I'm happy to have seen the journey to get here, but man, he is a tough ass out. Not pound for pound level yet, but it's like when he makes that decision to walk you down and get you out of there, he gets it done. He gets that done.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not the only one, BC. Like the jury for us over here, like we've seen all but one of Tim's fights. His pro debut, I believe, wasn't televised. So we've seen from the second fight onwards, either on TV or streaming or whatever, certainly the second half of his career to this point. But like there was a long time. It took till about sort of 12, 13, 14 fights in where even we were like, okay, we're really starting to see some development now. Like I remember I've only seen him live once, and I think it was his 7th or 8th fight. Was actually on Andrew Maloney's undercard. Andrew Maloney fought Lewis Conception. They got him out. In your favourite city in Australia.
Which one is that? Would
Bendigo.
That be... Oh, yeah, the battle. Meet me at the battle at Bendigo. Mandingo. Yeah, I don't know. Bendigo. There we go. Yes. Fantastic city.
Yeah, no, it is a great town. Yeah, and even then, that was my only time seeing him up close, and I was like, oh, geez, I'm not sure. But, to his credit and the development and the credit of his coaching team and the way they've matchmaked all the way through, he's certainly got to the point where he's at now, which the whole world's excited for. But I just remembered as well, BC, totally unrelated. We'll get to it later. But I only realised a couple of weeks ago that I've actually had a Campione moment.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened. And it happened that night in Bendigo all those years ago in like 2017 or whatever. But we'll get to that later because we've got.
Was it a couple Fosters deep or what? Where are we at?
That's how Campiones roll. It has to be a Campione. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm picking Tim as well in this fight. But it's unfortunate because Fundora is such a nice guy. You've obviously dealt with him personally. Sure. I don't think it's going to end well for him, but it's going to be fun while it lasts, that's for sure. But BC, I just want to move on to the co-main event. One of your favourite fighters, Rolly Romero, fighting Isaac Cruz. I don't know what to make of this fight. Can you just put some context on it for me?
I mean, in some ways, it's like the loser's bracket of the recent Gervonta Davis pay-per-view level, of the idea of like, hey, maybe the winner of this could get Gervonta a second time, even though this is a 140-pound title fight. And it seems like these two have moved up to 140 where Gervonta's still at 35. But I think if you look at it, the larger context of, man, this 140-pound division is boxing sex division, right? Like welterweight's the money division, heavyweight's the historic Renaissance division, middleweight comes and goes. But like right now, man, everyone you want to see is at 140 of the young breakout stars who all want the smoke now. They jump from network to network, whether it's Ryan Garcia forcing DAZN to do that partnership in the tank one, or Devin Haney jumping literally from network to promoter as he follows his ambitions. Big fight in that sense, where both the winner and the loser would be perfect opponents for name anyone in and around 140. But I think for Rolly, I'm focused on this is I have more grace for this man than most who look at him as nothing more than a clown prince or just an absolute clown. I think he's a brilliant, comedic, irreverent genius in some weird ways, but that's because I'm weird. But he's going to have to win a big fight. And this is a really tough fight against Isaac Cruz. So let's not forget, I know it was last minute, but he pushed Gervonta to the limit in a close unanimous decision loss where most people look up at the lights at the end of a Gervonta Davis fight. He's no nonsense, Pitbull Cruz. He gets inside on you. He's going to be there all night. But Rolly's not nearly as good as his record and status as title holder would indicate. But he's also not nearly as bad as his critics and haters seem to think. He is a unique, sort of weird fighter in that he does have an amateur background, yet fights in a almost barbaric street fight style. And it does seem that he has enough one-touch, ridiculous power that you have to respect it. Even Gervonta Davis talked about that afterwards, that, like, damn, he hit harder than I expected he would. I had to be very careful. But he's got this persona of, like, he's going to come in there, fight flat, talk a lot of junk, get a decision he doesn't deserve, and then hightail it on out of there. This is like the true referendum. Like, if you want to dance on this level and not just be the second coming of Ricardo Mayorga in the sense where it's like you're close enough to elite, you talk yourself into big fights with the swagger and the punch, but no, eventually you have to win them. And Rolly was not able to do that against Gervonta, although it turned out to be an interesting spectacle. His two biggest wins, both title fights, he didn't win either. Whether you're talking about Barroso, whether you're talking about that original interim title fight, who was that? Who did he fight? Jackson Mariñez, who back in the pandemic days where it's like, nah, he didn't win that one either. I hope for Rolly's sake that he either wins or at least saves face in defeat, because I think we need guys like this. Pure entertainers, pure action power guys. He'll talk trash to anyone. God, he's been calling out Errol Spence of all people for like the last 2 years, and we're all like, really, Rolly? But, if this guy can play his cards right, he could end up fighting the Ryan Garcias, the Devin Haney's, the whomever over the next year or 2 years. But to truly be in the driver's seat for some of these fights, he's got to defend his title and he's got to win. So I know he switched trainers recently.
Oh,
I think he got rid of the guy that they called Bullet. Yeah. Who came out during the press conference for the first Tank fight, or the first time they tried the Tank fight, and was like, yeah, I don't train him to box. I train him to hurt people and destroy them. And it's like, Clubber Lang from Rocky 3. It's straight out of central casting. But I think Rolly's got to come in there and think, look, what do I do best? I thump. Let's get into a war. Let me find a way to get off my shots. He shouldn't be favored to beat Pitbull Cruz. A lot of people are thinking maybe he even gets knocked out because Pitbull is that consistent and tough and hard-nosed and gets in your chest. But I think Rolly's got a big opportunity here to show the people that think he's worthless that he's something, and then hopefully for his future cases can pull off a win. Uphill battle, you got to favor Cruz, but I like this because normally, look, Rolly can be a B-side against anyone forever because he's that dude. But is he this level of dude? Can he go in there and surprise us and win a big fight? I'm going to argue and say that, maybe the upgrade to Fendora changed that. But as this card looked on paper coming in, I think a lot of us circled this co-main event. Like, this is an absolutely legitimate fight that could headline any Showtime Championship Boxing or DAZN card anywhere. This is an absolutely legit fight, Romero versus Cruz, and I'm looking forward to it.
So I have two questions or two things I need your help with, BC, because I just don't know the answers to these. I really don't. With the Gervonta Tank Davis fight and Rolly Romero, I thought Rolly was doing really well. He was overperforming, at least in my estimations. But then I'm thinking, well, we know Tank has that low output style. He likes to download the data, as they say, before he starts really letting his shots go. Was he giving away rounds to find that perfect shot, and it just happened to come a little later than we were thinking? I don't know who to give credit there. Did Rolly overperform, or did Tank just kind of let him do whatever till he found it? I don't know. The other thing I don't know is Isaac Cruz isn't exactly a big lightweight. He's fighting at 140. He's a very small in stature guy, thick and strong, but he's very small for the weight, especially. How do you see either of those? Like, what did you make of Rolly's performance against Tank, and how do you think Cruz is going to go at 140?
I think it was a little bit of both in the Tank fight, where creative and dangerous enough early where Tank was like, oh crap, I've got to go into the download mode. I've got to go into certainly be careful mode. I think it forced Tank to set up the perfect shot, which was ultimately the counter shot that knocked him down and set up the end of that fight. I think Rolly did overperform, but I think Tank's the better fighter. And when you can mix that level of speed, accuracy, and power together from a crouching stance, southpaw position, the way Tank does, I mean, he is just brilliant. But how you spin that forward, you brought up probably the best point I've heard anyone say, because I'm hearing too many people matter-of-factly say, oh, Pitbull Crew's going to knock Rolly out, right? We're going to send Rolly back to where he belongs, right? Like on like the JV level or something. He's going to have a size disadvantage. And if he's going to get inside, and I know that Pitbull has a great chin. Look at, he went 12 rounds against Gervonta, but this is at 140, and Rolly's an absolutely legitimate puncher for this division. He has very good size, very muscular, very athletic. Yeah, I could see this being a war, and one where, Cruz, will he get inside? Will he throw more punches? Will he land more? Probably. He's going to go to the body. He's going to look to almost do a poor man's Customato, Mike Tyson cutting in with the big looping hooks and stuff. But it's going to take one Rolly check left hook on the chin to let him know that this is a real fight. So I do think that's a great reason why you can't fully count out Rolly in this, and just realize that with the switching trainers, with the idea that, look, Rolly's not like Rolly's active. He sits out and waits for the big events too. He knows everybody thinks he's nothing. I think he's going to come out and overperform again, but really it might not be overperforming. It might just be like leveling out and performing accurately in certain categories like he can. He can be a big bully. He can be a big scare and a threat. But no, Rolly does not have head movement, natural defensive instincts, natural technical instincts. He's just able, though, to take an awkward style and make it very dangerous. And I think this is a fight. I think this is an absolutely legit fight. I mean, it's a world title fight in the sport's, arguably most fun division. But I actually think that both guys are going to have to really empty the tank to try to win this. And I think this could be a thriller. Well,
BC, as you've done many times in the past, I really wasn't that excited for this fight, but now sort of hearing your breakdown, I'm fully into it. I'm ready to go now. So thanks for getting me fired up. But we'll move down the card. We've got another Australian, also that you're pretty familiar with, Michael Zarafa, fighting, long-time WBA middleweight champion Erislandy Lara. He's only defended the title twice and fought he's 41 and he's fought twice in 3.5 years, I think, something like that.
He beat Cornflake LaManna for the title. I mean, shout out to Cornflake, big longtime fan of that regional fighter. But he's 40 years old. He was the standard of the 154 division forever. And I think that Lara is, when you're that quick and smart, you're always going to retain. And I think that's why you're going to retain your skill set into your late years. And I think that's why he had such really fun fights back to back. You remember the fight of the year against Jared Hurd, and then the draw with Brian Castano that a lot of people forget about. I still think this is a fight he should win, but he was never, meaning Erislandy Lara, big for 154. I always felt his move up to 160 was sort of odd and weird. And to your point, we've never really seen him tested against a legit middleweight. There were talks forever that he was going to fight Danny Garcia at a catchweight for this middleweight title, which was a weird fight that didn't make sense either. This one makes a little bit more sense. Unfortunately, we had that weird episode in Orlando to set this up. Do you remember this, where the manager of Michael Zarafa, who's also the son of Elvis Grant Phillips, the glove design maker and manager. Yeah, he accosted Samson Lukowitz, and suddenly B-Hop's like, yo, who's meeting me in the men's room? It got a little weird there, but look, we got the fight. I respect for Zarafa, but sometimes it can be hard to break a first impression. And when he did arrive on the scene initially in the States, remember back in that PBC launch, and he got sent to hell. We all were convinced that he was a male stripper, only because the only picture available was like a Facebook photo of him in like Chippendale's Halloween, like bow tie and cuffs. And we're like, oh, great, Peter Quillen's fighting a male stripper now. I'll give Zarafa credit, man. He has lingered for a decade, and he's a tough out. He's a big puncher. I know he's got 4 losses. He's been through the wars, but this is a weird kind of crossroads-ish fight where it's like, how is Zarafa going to look on this elite global level at 160? But is it really elite global if it's a blown-up 154 who's 40 years old fighting for a title that he didn't really actually beat anybody for? I think it's out there. I think anytime you're fighting an Asian Cuban, And I know this sounds like I'm setting up for some like Archie Bunker joke, but I'm not. But look, as masterful and beautiful as Cuban boxers are, their lack of output is always an issue. It's been Lara's issue, and his loss to Paul Williams, which felt like a robbery, his loss to Canelo, which I scored for Lara.
Me too.
Now with the older age, I think can Zerafa come in and really just put that constant pressure and not worry about hitting him clean, but just pressure, hit the shoulders, hit whatever you can, and avoid that counter left hand, which I think will still have some speed and pop on it for Lara. But this is oddly kind of an even fight in my mind in some ways because of that. Lara's obviously historically a higher class fighter without question than Zerafa, but Zerafa's not done yet, and he can punch. And, Lara is tough, but we saw back in the day Alfredo Angulo take him downtown a couple times in a win, in a fight of the year contender that he had to gut through to win. Can you get the old guy into a war? That could be interesting if Michael Zerafa can pull that off.
Yeah, you've nailed all the points I was going to bring up, BC. They're both as inactive as each other, but I think that probably favors Zerafa a little bit more. His last two fights in the last 3 years, he had a second-round knockout over a guy called Isaac Hardman in Australia, who's kind of like domestic/fringe regional level. It was a big grudge match. They had a full-on fist fight at the weigh-in. It was pretty embarrassing, but Zerafa got him out of there.
Well, I mean, look, if your last name's Hardman, I'm your number one fan. I mean, there's no question about it.
Oh, right? You love him. But he just recently lost again against the Mexican guy a couple of weeks ago. But so he had that 2 rounds where he didn't get touched and got out of there completely unscathed. He had an 8-round decision win over, again, another domestic guy, seemingly with this fight on the horizon about a year ago. So he took no risk and it was incredibly boring. Nothing much happened. But I think that's really freshened him up after sort of those Jeff Horn wars, where we get a lot of criticism of Jeff Horn from overseas and that type of thing. He'll always be a legend here. That's a debate for a different day. But you've seen those fights. Fair enough, you can say critique the technique level and stuff like that. You cannot critique how much of a war that was and how tough both men were and how much damage they both took. So I actually like that Zerafa's coming in with this level of inactivity. I think it's really going to freshen him up. He's only 32. I believe back in the day when he wasn't actually a stripper, I think someone offered him like $500 to be a topless waiter at some girl's 21st or something. So he took it. But he turned pro at 18. He's a road warrior. As you said, it hasn't always gone his way.
How is he only 33, dude?
32.
He's been around forever.
Yeah.
32. Jeez.
I know, he turned pro at 18. He's like, I used to see him at the Reggio Calabria Club where they used to have the amateur fights down here. Like, he was been fighting forever. He's a lifelong boxer. The guy's I can't hate that. You know what I mean? Even though, again, if he does some cringy things on the mic, I can't hate that. I don't know him. I've never spoken to him, but I just have all the respect in the world for him because I know what he's capable of and what he'll risk when he steps through the ropes. So obviously I'm being hugely biased and patriotic and stuff like that. I'm hoping he can get it done. But I have as many questions about this matchup as you do and this division in general. Like middleweight, post-Triple G Canelo just seems to be a rather barren wasteland, you know?
I mean, Carlos Adames can't get a fight. Remember when he knocked out Montiel? And it was like, hey, give him Jamal Charlo for the title. Let's do this. Now you've got him talking about moving up to 68 because it's just where the money is. So you're right, Adames. I was talking about. I mean, Triple G retiring kind of softly, walking away. I know Danny Jacobs is making a comeback again at 68, but he left middleweight and then kind of lingered away. And they've never replaced it. I'd like to see Jamal Charlo get active again. I'd like to see some type of activity, but. It's a title fight. It counts, but it is a little weird in the way that it's set up with 2 guys who are away for so long and some of that weird drama back in Orlando that put this together. But let's see what Lara's got left. It's just hard to gauge from recent experience. Yeah.
Well, one thing I'm not sure if the American side knows, but in another kind of weird twist to this, that's pretty cool, but it is sort of unexpected from left field. Apparently, Michael Zerafa was at a WBA convention like 3 or 4 months ago. I don't know, at some point in time, and he met Nonito Donaire. And they just became like really good friends. So Nonito Donaire has trained him for this camp. He actually came out to Melbourne for like 6 weeks. He's with Zerafa now in Los. Like they were together every day for 2 months. Like I think Nonito Donaire is like the head trainer.
There you go. I remember Nonito was just recently being trained and managed by his wife Rachel too. So it's good to see Nonito picking up. I mean, that was his dad's craft, obviously, Glenn, and to see him doing that and giving back to so many young fighters, that's an interesting relationship that's popped up there. But let's see if that's makes any changes for Zarafa. Wow, and he even flew out to Australia to do it. I mean, Glenn Rushton was probably available. Just House of Dreams, just pick up the phone. You know what I mean?
There's too much of a queue. Zarafa would have to get to the back of it. They're beating the door down at the old Dolphin Fountain. But there's another really good fight that finishes off this main card, which again, because of the change 12 days ago or 10 days ago at this point, has actually made it a better fight too. I thought the fight of the card going in was going to be Sebastian Fundora and Sergey Bohachuk. That just had action written all over it. Now there's been the reshuffle, but the way they've filled Sergey Bohachuk's position, bringing in Brian Mendoza, who apparently was training with Tim in Vegas, so he's seemingly ready to go. That's a fantastic fight. This, again, you pointed it out immediately as soon as we started talking about this card. Every change that could have happened has made it better. This is fantastic.
I know. And even though this loses the official WBC title, I believe they're putting interim title status on there. I guess just, thanks Sergey Bohachuk for being a adaptable player. But I actually called Bohachuk's only career defeat. It came against Brandon Adams. It was a come from behind knockout loss when Bohachuk was ahead. And I wondered at that point for this, bright young prospect coming from Eastern Europe, has the Tom Loeffler promoter relationship, had such great success with Triple G and the Klitschko's, and he can punch. And I thought that loss could be the thing that sends, a lot of fighters get to that point and it sends you from contender status to pretender status quickly. But how he's bounced back since then and working on deep PBC undercards and just knockout after knockout, this guy is legit and this guy can absolutely thump. Yeah, and you talk about Mendoza that was one of the better stories. I don't even think got the love to the level it probably should have, the way that he was originally sort of a fun prospect of his own and it didn't pan out, and then to come back with the back-to-back big knockout wins like he's had. Yeah, did get humbled against Tim Tszyu, but certainly didn't look bad. I think in a lot of ways he elevated his name from that performance, Mendoza, and took him the distance at just the same as well. And had certain moments where he adjusted and was able to swim at times on a certain level. But yeah, this is opportunity here. This is opportunity to catapult yourself into this title picture. Good to see Mendoza, who was, I believe, originally being set up as for this exact opportunity, just in case for emergency, if anyone in and around 54 should fall off and they need him. But fresh, fun new matchup, just the same too. This is going to be interesting, and it's like, okay, even at its original form, Thurman versus Tszyu, maybe not exactly what you would have wanted, maybe not exactly the thing that's going to get everybody wearing PBC on Prime shirts and running down the road. But pay-per-views in boxing are never deep anymore. To get a deep one like this, and the two fights that are, on regular television to set it up are not bad either. This is a good turn. This is a good development. And it might have to be that way for PBC, as we really don't know much about their Amazon Prime deal. It's tough to get information out of PBC on the regular due to the way that they handle communication, and there's been so many changes for them. But if their calling card is going to be depth moving forward, we know that they only have 12 to 14 dates over this calendar year. This could be interesting because they have so many fighters that need dates. This would be a very good way to establish your reputation, even though there's always been the debate of what sells in boxing pay-per-views. Well, the main event, right? You can argue that nothing else matters than that. If you can develop a reputation for putting on solid, consistent, well-matched cards like this is what we need in boxing.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. But excuse me, it's one hell of it's not a bad debut card. Now, I was skeptical at first, but the changes, I really like it. I'm sort of going over old ground, but yeah, I'm pumped now. BC, you've got me so excited for this card. What is it, 3 days away? This is going to kill me. But also, we've got the night before in Glendale, Arizona, in a brilliant fight involving another Aussie, which was just announced yesterday that it's for the interim WBO title at junior lightweight, Oscar Valdez and Liam Wilson. This seemingly just, with both guys' style, I just don't see it going to points. Someone's getting knocked out. I grant that our guy is the slight underdog on that one. Valdez is tough as hell and has all the experience and the punching power as well. But this is truly a fight I think anything can happen. What were your first initial thoughts when this one popped up on your radar?
Slugfest, first of all. And I love when Top Rank does this. They bring fights to Glendale, Arizona, right outside of Phoenix. Huge Mexican-American population. By the way, very interesting co-main event with that women's undisputed fight, just the same. But when I heard about this matchup, it's like, okay, let me see where Oscar Valdez is at right now at age 33. He has been, at times we've called him like the Mexican Arturo Gatti, and maybe that feels a little bit hyperbolic, but he's been one of the consistent action heroes of this modern era here in boxing. And the Scott Quigg war, the knockout of the year against Miguel Burchell. But he's coming in here as a consistent headliner, but as a guy who's lost 2 out of his last 3 at the very highest level, of course, when we're talking about the humbling he took against Shakur Stevenson and then that fight against Emmanuel Navarrete, which was absolutely chef's kiss when you're talking about yet another action fight and the rallying and the ebbs and flows that we saw there. I don't know exactly if Oscar Valdez is still the same Oscar Valdez. The wars do add up. We've seen him sort of top out against Stevenson of what is going to be the peak of what his boxing skills will look like against somebody truly elite when he has to be more of the follower, the stalker, and the puncher. He's entering this one where I'm not sure if he's truly coming or going. And that's where I think Liam Wilson could be just the Johnny on the spot of the moment where you know that he can put his head down and make fun fights. Recent victim as well to Emmanuel Navarrete, who is one of the more, just painfully underrated fighters globally in terms of his just, uniqueness and toughness. But this is going to be an interesting matchup to see who's coming or going. And I think we can't count out Liam Wilson here at all. And I think that he's got sort of that he's got huevos. The kid's got balls, right? And certainly, you're going to need them. You're going to need them against Valdez, but I think we're going to get just yet another top rank on ESPN Friday night action classic here. I don't know whose hand I'm going to raise, though, in sort of looking ahead at it. I mean, Valdez has better skill, better experience, everything that you mentioned there, but he's always fell way too in love with his action reputation. Yeah. And once he tastes blood, it's like the game plan's off, and there we go. And I think Oscar has already swam his peak. The Miguel Burchell knockout, the changes in his game with Eddie Reynoso as his trainer and moving to Team Canelo. Now it's, can he maintain that? This is going to be a fun-ass weekend of boxing. I mean, you got that. You got Sinisa Estrada, who's one of the pound-for-pound best in the world, in that co-main event against Yacosta Valle and that undisputed clash at 105. This is a good fun-ass card and a good weekend of boxing.
Absolutely, mate. And you kind of nailed it exactly with your breakdown of Valdez. And it's so strange because, again, we've had the luxury of being able to see Liam Wilson from his pro debut. We've seen it every fight he's had so far. And it's like he kind of started like Oscar Valdez doing. Although you wouldn't say their styles are similar, they both started as skilled boxers who could punch. So I really thought for both of them that the career trajectory was going to be those high IQ level boxer punchers who can identify the opening, execute it perfectly, get out of there nice and clean. Or at least that was my hope. Valdez showed us that in that fight with Evgeny Gradovic when he fought on the back foot for 5 rounds. He was clearly setting up the left hook and he just waited for the perfect time and detonated it on the button. Then he won the title, I think, a fight or two later and turned into a psychopathic brawler. And he just loves it. That's how he rolls. Liam Wilson was very similar. He's huge for the weight. He's long. He had like 135 amateur fights, I think, represented Australia multiple times at amateur level, that's a lot of amateur fights for Australia. We don't have the pool of talent, So he was very experienced amateur internationally too. And he certainly he started using those boxing skills beautifully. He knocked out a guy called Jesus Cuadro. I think I sent you the clip years ago, who the fight before had just gone 12 rounds with Jojo Diaz in Mexico. Again, Jojo probably wasn't at 100% and was just using that fight to work through. But it's his 5th fight. He knocks this dude clean out with the left hook, no wind-up, picture-perfect technique. And again, then he just turns into a psychopathic brawler. So I feel like this could be a really high IQ level boxing match. But just with the guys' tendencies and the way they like to compete, we've seen it. There's evidence there. It's just going to be 2 trains on a track, I feel like. And at that point, I guess it sort of just becomes 50-50.
It really does. And man, Top Rank knows how to put these bangers together in a lot of ways. So certainly looking forward to that one. But man, we got to get Shakur Stevenson in a big fight. Speaking of Valdez, right?
Yes.
I mean, are you of the belief that of all the young ones that are on the rise that he's the truly special one? I mean, Haney is great. Devin Haney is great, but I feel and I fear that Shakur could be even better. I don't hold against him that he's coming off, a very boring win and sort of seemed like he was hiding behind an injury and just sort of happy to get the win and move on. You can't touch that guy, and he's got a backbone too. So, damn, I want to see that guy now. I want to see him against Tank. I want to see him against Loma. I want to see him against all of them.
Right? I agree. I think he's in the exact same boat as as Naoya Inoue. The only thing that's going to beat him is size. Shakur started a lot lighter than those guys. Like he seems to be a pretty decent sized lightweight. Haney's huge at 140. If they fought at 140, would that physicality sort of, bridge the gap a little bit or the perceived gap? But I couldn't see him fighting at 147. But I agree. I think Shakur's the class 100%. And yeah, he needs to be challenged. You need to have a guy in there who's going to challenge him. I think that would bring the best out of him. But again, Top Rank know what they're doing, so I'm sure they've got a path.
Kambosos would have been an interesting-ish fight, but we're going to get Kambosos Loma instead. It doesn't suck. It's something. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's good. It's decent.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the biased Aussie. It's decent. It's good. I hope he wins.
It's not like when you guys used to throw at us, who was that guy Danny Jacobs mopped up with? Jared something?
Jared Fletcher.
There's been some rough Aussies that have applied their trade. I mean, we love ourselves some washed Gil, even though they did him dirty in that Golovkin fight with that 4-minute round one. You remember that at MSG? Wow.
And he beat Darren Barker. But anyway, we'll save that for another. We'll save my complaining. But this era is different, as you pointed out, BC, with Tim. The Aussies coming over now. It's not. They're not perceived as a lamb to the slaughter. These are live fights. Anything can happen. But really fun weekend of boxing coming up, BC, and thanks for breaking it down for us, mate, and getting me even more excited. But do you want to hear about my Campione?
Yes, please.
So do you just want to quickly explain what a traditional Campione is?
Yeah. So look, I'm a journalist, right? But I'm a boxing fan, and when I go to Vegas and my other journalist friends are there, we're journalists and businessmen by day. But, we'll crack a cold one at night and walk around the strip and try to Campione our heroes. And what it really means is just verbally accosting, when you run into Eric Morales at the MGM Grand or, Casamayor or whoever your own personal Campione is, a guy that you just look at as an absolute badass and legend. And when you see them, you have to drunkenly invade their conversation and tell them. And if there's a language gap, like there has been when I accosted both Barrera and Morales separately, all I say is huevos, buddy, huevos. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So I have accosted quite a few of my Mexican heroes. Who have you accosted down under?
Well, I'll tell you this story. So it happened in Bendigo. It was at the Andrew Maloney-Lewis Conception fight, which at the time was Andrew Maloney's biggest fight that he'd been in. Like, that was a big get to get Lewis Conception out at that time. I think it was 2017, 2018. Now, Andrew's brother Jason was just about to fight Emmanuel Rodriguez for the IBF bantamweight title in the first round of the World Boxing Super Series. I think this was like 6 weeks later. So I went up to the fight to Bendigo with my old man. We went to the pub, had a few beers. We turn up to the arena when the fights were on. The first fight was starting. Everyone was walking around trying to find their seats. And out of nowhere, I just noticed like a guy standing sort of down behind the first section of seats, just standing there watching the fights, and everyone was just walking past him. And I go to my old man, I go, "Hey, Fit, is that Jason Maloney?" Like, just standing there watching the fight. And he goes, "Yeah, I think it is." And I was like, got a better angle. I moved around. I go, "That's Jason. Look at all these people. This guy's about to fight for a world title. In 6 weeks. Jeff Fennick's old title, the first world title that Jeff Fennick won was the IBF bantamweight title. And all these people were just walking past. They're not even acknowledging him. Like, this is insane. And my old man goes, "Well, go and talk to him." And I went, "All right." So I went up to him and I can't remember exactly what I said, but I was just like Campione style, like I've said to you before, Andrew and Jason are my two favorite fighters. And I shake his hand and I'm like shaking it and talking to him for like a really uncomfortably long time. What I mean? And I'll just say, "Jay, you guys are unbelievable. I've been watching you since the amateurs. You're fighting for a world title. No one knows you here. You should be the face of Australian boxing, blah, 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 da-da-da-da-da." Anyway, I don't know. The spiel might have gone for about 25 seconds or so. And once I'd finished just saying whatever I was saying, he goes, "Yeah, mate, I'm Andrew. I'm fighting tonight."
Oh, that's so good. It's so bad, but it's so good.
And I didn't even notice when I was shaking his hand, like his hands were wrapped.
Oh man, that's embarrassing. That is rough.
A tsunami of embarrassment, just like watched.
I appreciate it a lot. That is rough.
I blacked out and just walked off. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I haven't campioned since.
Yeah, you can't come back from that. No, there'd be no cameo. I mean, if they don't look at you like you might be mentally deranged, is it really a campeon moment? That's really how I define it. You know what I mean? It's got to be aggressive and just all about manhood, right? Just like, man, that's what it's got to be. I've done that to Rocky Juarez. I've campioned a few guys.
Well, no surprise. Andrew was, totally polite and really cool about it. Probably happens all the time, but that was my one and only.
There you go. There you have it.
I'll get back on the horse one day. But BC, let's get back onto something less embarrassing. Morning Kombat has been on a little bit of a hiatus lately. Few changes in the works and those type of things. I believe we're pretty close to a relaunch. What sort of details can you give us for the immediate future?
I mean, I could have given you a different update every day for the past 6 months. It's been stressful and all over the place, but that's corporate life. But we're happy. We are moving on. We've had a great run at CBS Sports, a company I will still be employed at. I'll still be just re-signed to continue writing and doing some video work for them. But with the end of Showtime Sports in the U.S., it also ended the strong commitment that my parent company, Paramount Global, had put into combat in recent years. They owned Bellator MMA for a while. There was Showtime Championship Boxing. But when all of that went away, there was sort of a reckoning. And in a lot of ways, like Morning Kombat it became a Zoom podcast, but it was always a studio show. And we wanted to fight to find a new home, to find an ability to do what we do best. And we found that by partnering with both Meadowlark and DraftKings here in the States, all the Smoke Productions, a lot of the leadership there is some ex-Showtime people who started the show with us, our patriarch Brian Daly back in 2019. So it's a logical, natural step. It was a fight to get there, but we will begin a week from this past Monday. So it's Monday, April 1st. 2024, we'll be relaunching. So more to come on the Morning Kombat YouTube channel. We're going to be on the DraftKings network. We're still kind of finalizing some of the corporate dotting the I's and the T's. And this is phase one of our relaunch. We do have some very, very big plans the rest of the year, but it felt good to finally get out of holding pattern, which we were. We've been idle since February from the standpoint of live shows. And of course, back then we did a lot more, and we're going to scale down and start slowly, but one live episode a week every Monday in New York City at Meadowlark Studios, same studios that Dan Lebitard owns, that Pablo Torre uses, some personalities in the States in the U.S. sports scene. So we're very excited to be here. We're going to be on location this week, as I mentioned, at the PBC pay-per-view card, getting interviews on Radio Row and putting out good content. But it's what we do, man. Put us in a studio, talk about fights. It'll get ridiculous. It'll get weird, but it'll get real. And that's what Morning Kombat is. And I'm so happy to be back.
That's awesome. That's great news, mate. I'm sure that lots of people listening will be, probably everyone listening will be absolutely pumped. But are we sort of expecting a very similar format to what we've become accustomed to? Is there going to be any sort of changes in that regard?
I think it's going to stay, probably the 2-hour format that we know, maybe spice up a bit of it. But in a lot of ways, we thought this relaunch would go differently. We thought we were going to take a couple months off, completely reinvent the wheel, rebuild a new team, build the studio up to our liking. There were hurdles. There were things in the way that slowed it down. So what we realized during that process is what makes the show best. When Luke and I are happy to be there, when we're in person, when we are excited and fired up, and boy, is this combat calendar over the next few months from UFC 300 to so many huge boxing fights, including Usyk Fury coming up in Saudi. I mean, there's going to be no shortage of big events that we are going to go and do what we do best. It's going to be once a week, so it's going to be a mixture of reviewing the weekend and previewing what's coming and looking at the biggest headlines. But first and foremost, to be back, to be live, but to also be in New York City. We've been in Jersey City, which if you don't know in the States, it's a town in New Jersey over the river from Manhattan. Close enough, right? You can take the underground train. But from the standpoint of being on the ground in Manhattan, it gets no bigger. Having access now to so many fighter guests that are coming through the media circuits there, it's going to be a plus and a boom for us. So can't wait. The partnership with DraftKings means a lot of stuff, a lot of chances to go on the road, DraftKings branded, and they're at every big event and sponsored with in the States from a betting standpoint in boxing and MMA. So we want to be with them. We want to be aligned with them, and we hope to kind of not reinvent the wheel, but come to your city, depending on where you live, and not just set up the desk and provide the coverage, but do a live show at the bar, do a live podcast, get the fans involved and bring them in. So it's going to be really fun. I think if we could show everybody the final picture, they'd go, okay, you guys are onto something. We like what you're doing here, but one step at a time.
Excellent. That's great news. And selfishly, I'm a Doc fan. What's the status of the Docs moving forward? I'd like 4 a year. One every 3 months. I think would be perfect.
I mean, there was a point when they were their hottest, if you will, where we were considering scaling to the level of just doing them once a month, just being travel logs. But the doc is on hold. We have footage from the start of 2023. It was really the peak of our show when we went to London a year ago and headlined a podcast festival, sold out 500 tickets. We've got the behind-the-scenes footage of there. We've got some behind-the-scenes scenes of the past year when it was obvious that our empire was crumbling, Showtime was going away. We lamented that. But, they're billable hours for Jake Von Amsterdam, our fine documentarian. So right now we're not aligned with Jake. I hope we can be again one day soon once we get all of our ducks in a row. And that, let me just say that when it was talked about of taking Morning Kombat, of leaving CBS Sports, of taking ownership of the IP and of going our own way, one of the non-negotiables I raised my hand and said was, we need the docs. We need Jake. I hope one day soon we will get that and we can finish telling the greatest story, one of the greatest stories. Okay, it's an awful story, but it's one of the stories that they've told. Okay, it's one of them.
It's an entertaining story.
Yeah. It's just the ups and downs, the growth of men. It is what it is.
Absolutely, mate. But that's great. Well, best of luck with the relaunch coming up, and hopefully it runs smoothly, and all the promises that are made and all the plans that have been laid. I hope they become fruitful ones for you, mate. And we'll be supporting.
We have so many Aussie fans, and they all live in Perth. It seems. What's up with Perth? They have weirdos.
I've never been there. I'm sure they're cool. I don't know.
John Anik says it's like 3 days, a flight, and a 10-hour drive. That's how you get to Perth.
Yeah, well, that's probably the long way, but who knows bought these tickets. But BC, we always finish up on Survivor, mate.
Yes.
So I think last time we spoke, I revealed to you that I was about 2 seasons behind. The whole new post-COVID format change, and I don't know, I just wasn't feeling it. But you inspired me. I caught up. I binged it all. I got up to speed. And then I just got worn down again. So the last season I've seen was the one Alligator one, which I think is 2 behind. I think I'm 2 behind again.
Okay.
Are you currently up to date?
Here. I am very up to date. Okay. I am in, by the way. Shout out to Enoch Marchant, a longtime listener of the BC and Rave podcast back in the day. He is a record store owner in North Carolina in the States, and I am in his extended family survivor pool where we are every week trying to guess the person that won't get eliminated to survive in advance. I think last season was one of my favorite in a long time. My wife and kids did not like it, for the record. Ooh. I thought it was microwave Survivor. They've changed the format from 39 days down to 26. Really, the evolution of Survivor has been microwaving it. It has been taking something that was unique and interesting, but could go long, could go boring, could go predictable or unexciting, and they just constantly blow it up with new ideas, new changes, new whatever. And I thought last year was the best version of that. And also last season had the best people, I think, ever in one combined season.
Can I just clarify something quickly, BC? So I think that if this is the season you're talking about, did some girl voluntarily remove herself on the first episode?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was watching that series live, and I was
That's why my wife and kids were like, this is lame, it's awful, I don't want to be a part of it. I'm like, no, this is interesting. This season, there was a hangover because seriously, last season had the most likable group of people that you were ever going to see.
Wow.
Top to bottom that made it to the end.
Okay.
This season, though, it's different, but I like it. I like what they're doing. I like it a lot. I don't just say that because I'm a CBS employee. I say that because this is serious to me, and I like it, man. It's exciting. I'm really into it. So
you might have
get on board.
You might have done it again, BC. You've got me interested. I think I'm gonna have to catch up. But My massive gripe with it, I just think they get the casting wrong. But I guess you've just completely kiboshed that theory because you said the casting was great. So I'm going to have to go back. I've got them all recorded. I just haven't found the motivation to start actually sitting through them. And we've also got the Australian Survivor as well. But the Australian one's a bit different. It's like 24 episodes and there's 3 episodes a week and they go for like an hour and a half. It's like way more reality, but it's not too bad. But
too much.
I've got some catching up to do, but thanks for giving me the kick up the arse I needed, BC. But I did lie, mate. Just quickly, one more for you, and I need your help again. I know you're a massive music fan. I'm not. I'm just not much of a music guy. But my old man has been listening to the same USB stick with about 25 Bob Dylan songs on it for about 14 years in his car. I swear to God. It's just on loop for legitimately 14 years.
Do not ask him what is on the USB stick. There's a throwback podcast, Klitschko joke, soundboard. Gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
So that is incredible. The same 14 songs like on loop over and over.
For 14 years. I think there's like 25
14
songs.
years.
It's insane.
Jeez,
Every time I get in his car, it's like I've heard these things a million times. He loves Bob Dylan. He listens to this podcast called Pod Dylan, which this guy just talks to all these different people about individual Bob Dylan songs. It's insane. But I said, mate, you love this guy so much, you need some variety. So I'm coming to you for some help, BC. Have you got like some sort of, not totally mainstream album that maybe you wouldn't know about, or some sort of recommendation that's sort of left of center, but still in that Bob Dylan?
For your dad?
For my dad, yeah. I've got to get him off this USB stick.
Are you talking about new music or what?
I don't know. Of like some sort of Bob Dylan, because that's what we listens to. Like, is there a album that no one really knows about that's really cool or something like that? I've massively put you on the spot. I apologize.
I mean, why doesn't he just go album by album on the Bob Dylan classics? That would be very easy.
He's old school and he's stubborn as hell.
All right. He needs to get Blonde on Blonde, 1965 double album when or 1966, excuse me. There was a time I thought that was the greatest album in rock history. It is the most accessible, I believe, Bob has ever been, but also incredibly quirky. And it's upbeat and it's fun. Come on, get him the Blonde on Blonde. I don't know, CD. Do they have a CD in there? Do something. I mean, get him that. Let's at least do it album by album and appreciate the art.
All right. I apologize for putting you on the spot, BC, but we'll finish it up there, mate. But once again, thanks very much for your time, mate. I always have a absolute ton of fun talking to you. I know I always get amazing feedback. People love hearing from you, especially on our side of the world, mate. And obviously the MK stuff coming up is super exciting, and I wish you all the best for that. And I'm sure we'll see you pop up on a few more outlets that we're not 100% aware of just yet in the coming months, because you're an incredibly talented guy. That passion always bleeds through. We appreciate it. I love seeing you on the mic wherever it is. We'll take you where we can get you, mate. And thank you again. Just stay on the line. I'll just have a quick little chat to you while this uploads, and we'll do it again down the track sometime.
Thank you, brother.
All right, guys, and there we had it. That was my chat with Brian Campbell. BC is always so much fun to have a chat to. I know you guys enjoy it. You guys know I enjoy it. So it was a very, very difficult one not to have. An absolute ball. It's always fun chatting to BC, and today was absolutely no exception to that rule. So, guys, as always, I will put all the links to follow along with Brian personally via his social media, and also the link to the YouTube channel for Morning Kombat, which, as we just discussed at the end of that chat, is being very, very, very shortly relaunched in just a couple of days, actually. So if you want to get on and follow Brian personally or check out the Morning Kombat show, have you not already checked it out, you can just click in the description of the episode and get yourself up to speed. So, guys, this is unbelievable. I already thought I was really fired up for the fights. But as seems to be a theme, every time I start talking to someone else who's fired up about it, and then they point out, as Brian did, so many different angles and storylines and points that I didn't even think of, I'm I'm fired up. I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep for 3 days. I am fully pumped. So, I'm sure you guys are as well. But that was a heap of fun. I always love talking Survivor and going off on a few tangents here and there with BC as well. And the old Andrew Maloney Campione moment, which I told that story on the very first ever episode, of this podcast. But that was about 6 years ago now. But it only recently occurred to me that it did fall into the BC style Campione category. So, happy to be a laugh. And just to clarify too, Andrew was a total gentleman and couldn't have handled himself and conducted himself any better in what I clearly made a super awkward moment. So, to the surprise of no one, Andrew was a total thorough gentleman. But guys, that will do us. Now, as far as the next episode goes, I don't want to lock anything in, but I'm pretty confident we'll be getting one in sooner rather than later. And when I say sooner rather than later, I mean before the weekend. We could be dropping one before the fights on the weekend. But again, at the time of recording, haven't got a full-on 100% concrete confirmation, so I don't want to make any outlandish calls. But all I would say is if something pops up on your phone or your podcast app or however you listen in the next day or two, it wouldn't be a total shock. But also, as things have fallen through many times, let's not get our hopes up too much. But it could happen. So basically, I've just covered all bases there. So make of that what you will. But guys, if you want to get in contact with me, you can email the pod at tuscpod@gmail.com. That's tuscpod@gmail.com. If you want to throw a tweet at me, you can do that at delivery_man2. Also got the Insta account there, guys, if that's your preferred method of internet interaction. Social media. Why did I say internet interaction? Social media is the is the normal term. But anyway, guys, I'm too fired up about these fights coming up on the weekend. So let's leave this outro nice and short. Hopefully we'll be back before the fights on the weekend. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm optimistically optimistic, but anything could happen. But guys, either way, we're in for one hell of a weekend. Best of luck to all the Aussies competing overseas. Really hope we can do the trifecta. That would just be an unbelievable weekend. But more importantly, guys, enjoy the fights, and I'll chat to you later.
Well, let's travel, may add up the change. Living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came.
Going all out.
I was living like there's no tomorrow, then tomorrow came. I got the wake-up call, laughing through the window frame.